From Sacramento State, this is Beyond J, taking conversations from campus to the world. I'm your host, Philip Allstott. Are fish good parents? It's probably not a question on most people's minds, but it's a question that Sacramento State Professor of Biological Sciences Ron Coleman has been studying for 24 years. In his research, he looks at courting patterns, territorial battles, and how fish raise and protect their young. In addition, he also runs Sac State's unique Fish Lab, which is home to thousands of fish and open to anyone who wants to come by, take a look, and maybe learn a thing or two. In today's episode, we'll talk about how he got interested in this topic, the implications of his work, and what it's like to care for all those bubbling tanks of fish, and the role students play in both his research and in the Fish Lab. Dr. Coleman, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Phil. I very much appreciate being here.
Why don't you tell me what led to you becoming a scientist?
It's always an interesting question because some people say, I wanted to be a doctor or something else, or it just hit them. I've actually always wanted to be a scientist since I was very, very young. And I know this is a reference that a lot of people won't get, but there was a television show, Gilligan's Island. Does this mean anything to anyone?
Oh, yeah.
And Gilligan's Island, the basic premise is a bunch of people, a mix of people get stranded on a desert island. And it was a sitcom. It was supposed to be fun and all that kind of stuff, which it was. But there was a character on that show, the professor.
Yeah.
And I loved the professor. And everyone else was always busy trying to get off the island. Every episode is another creative way to get off the island. The professor was actually pretty happy to be on the island. There was always things for him to investigate, things to create. And another really important thing, which I think might resonate with many of my students and does resonate with them, everybody respected the professor. They saw this person as a source of good opinions, unbiased judgment. And I thought, that's a good way to live your life. And that's what I've tried to do.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Now, I heard from another party that you may have gone into studying the wildebeest in East Africa.
Yes, when I was an undergraduate at University of British Columbia, I'm a Canadian, if you can't tell by my outrageous Canadian accent. It's been beaten out of me in the last 30 years of living in California. I thought I would study the great migrations of wildebeest in Africa, these thundering herds. It's wonderful and interesting and exciting. Except I had a professor who actually did study those. And he took me aside once and said, just so you know, it's not quite the way it appears. So if you've ever been around a horse, and they're kind of smelly and messy. Said, imagine 20,000 of them all in one place at one time. He said that the romance leaves very quickly, on top of which they run away from you. And so it's actually rather difficult to do work. And so I thought about that. And at the time, I had gotten a job at the Vancouver Aquarium up in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from. And there were all these, it's a public aquarium, it's a beautiful, internationally known place. Thousands of different fish. And every time I went there, I would see more fish that I didn't know about and the cool things that they do. And I started out as what's called a floor boy. I cleaned ashtrays and bathrooms. And then I moved up to being what they called an interpreter, a guide. And I got to talk about fish and I learned more about fish. I just became very, very excited about fish.
So how did that then lead into an interest in studying fish's parenting habits?
The parenting aspect, yes. So most fish, sad to say, are not great parents. Most of them, actually, given the choice, will eat their kids. That's the way it is for probably 3/4 of the fish out there. You can think of herring or things like that. Even some fish which do provide short-term care, like their guppies. A lot of people have had a guppy as a pet. A few days later, they'll eat the kids.
Oh, man.
So then I was interested in fish, and then when the idea of doing grad school came along, I applied to various schools, and I got accepted by Simon Fraser University, which is also in British Columbia, and Mart Gross was a professor there, and I worked with Mart for many years. And he worked on a very peculiar system called the bluegill sunfish, which do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. But one aspect that he needed to learn about was the dads. The dads provide the parental care. And that got me very interested because it turns out that in fishes, if there is parental care, if they're not going to eat the kids, it's the dad that does the work in almost all of the cases.
Yeah.
Female care is very rare, very unusual. But this idea of dads taking care of the kids is really cool. It's a very interesting thing in fish. So I got hooked on that.
So why don't you then just tell us about the research that you're doing now?
Yeah, okay. So I'll give you a little bit of a time arc. When I started working with the bluegill sunfish, I worked in the wild in eastern Canada, Ontario. And there you have a dad that takes care of kids in a nest. It's fast and furious. It's about a week of intense effort. And then the kids go off and they're gone. And he waits around and then he tries to do it again. He'll do that a couple of times in the summer. They only breed in the summer. So then, for my PhD, I was interested in what happens in those fishes where both parents take care of the kids. That's really what got me interested in that. The family, if you're going to work on that, is a group of fishes called cichlids. A lot of people see the word and it looks like chiclet,
Yeah.
but it isn't chiclet. Chiclet is gum.
I've been warned to say it correctly.
It's a cichlid. And the cool thing is that it's a large family of fishes, about 2,000 species. And there's all kinds of different parental care in there. There's some male only. That's not very common. There's a lot of female only. And there's a wonderful number of species where both parents take care of the kids. And so I got very interested in that. What's a little different about how they take care of their kids is that the dad and mom get together to have a family, but it's a one-time thing. They have a bunch of kids, and that may last for a few days or a few months. There's some that may even go longer than that. But then they don't have a long-term interest in each other. They go their separate ways, they find new partners, and they do it again. And so what this leads to a very interesting possibility of what's called conflict and cooperation. They have short-term cooperation. If they don't take care of the kids, other fish will eat their kids like in a second. I have video of it. It's horrible. Oh, no. Things come in and they eat the kids.
Yeah. So
they've got to work together. But in the long term, they have some conflict over how much each of them should do. The one parent would ideally like the other parent to use all of its energy up, and they'll save their energy for the next time. And so this is what I spend a lot of my time in my PhD studying, and things we still study today, is how do these biparental, that means both parents, how do these biparental fish figure out who's going to do what, and can they make the other parent do more of the care? And the answer is they can, and they do. There's all these weird little head games going on in the fish parental care. And so that intrigues me, and it intrigues my students.
Well, what is that like? Is it like a manipulation or like a game of chicken where they just hold back to see if the other one will step
Exactly,
in?
yes.
Okay.
They do that kind of stuff. So we do things in the lab where we make model fish. It is literally a little picture of a fish on a stick, and we threaten babies with that. No babies are harmed. But we threaten the babies, and then the parents have to decide, are they going to let this thing eat their kids? And they will attack the model, and they bite the model, and it's a wonderful thing to watch. We haven't actually done it in a little while, but they physically bite the model, and you can feel it, and you can watch it, and you can count it, and you can see which parent did the work. And so if we make particular combinations of parents, we can skew who's going to do the work. And the amazing thing is, in a typical natural pair, you've got a smaller female and a larger male. That's the typical way it works in the wild. And people saw that and said, okay, well, that's the female does a lot of the parental care. She fans the eggs and does a lot of the guarding, and the male kind of tools around on the outside. But that's not because she's female. That's because she's small. When I make pairs that have small males and big females, now it's the male that fans the eggs and does all the close-in care. and the female tools around on the outside. So it shows it's not a sex or gender thing. It's a size thing.
Yeah, to some degree, they're sizing each other up.
They are sizing each other up, and it has to do, without getting into too many details, about their future possibilities of mating and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot going on in these fish that are maybe 3 inches long, little tiny head, but there's a lot that they're figuring out in there, and it's wonderful and interesting to watch.
Have you observed at any point, because if I get this right, they are, when they're done raising the children, they're pairing off now with different fish.
They go off and feed for a while, swim around, and then they go back and look for another mate.
Okay. Are there have you ever observed them coming back to the same mate? In
a tank, if they have no choice. In the wild, we've not been able to observe this because they go off and we can't tell who is who.
Hard to identify them.
Yeah, there's a chance that they come back to the same one, but in general, no. There's lots of other fish, and they find a new one, and they do some of the most wonderful courtship. In these fishes, it's not just the guys courting the girls; it's the girls courting the guys. And they do this with behavior and with colors. Oh. And the females put on their absolute best colors. It's quite remarkable to see. They're all dressed up, and the guys are dressed up. They're looking pretty sharp. And once they find their partner, all that goes away. The color just goes away. They can change color second by second.
Really?
And they're like, I don't need that anymore. I already got my partner. Oh. And now they go into, now we're doing the parenting thing. We don't need to do any more courting. In most cases. And now we're going to do the parent thing. And they put on a different set of colors. And those colors now tell other fish, we are parents. Do not mess with us because we will mess with you.
Yeah.
And they get very intense black marks on them. Their eyes go dark, either red or black. And it's like they're just telling other fish, don't try this.
Yeah. Are there questions that you've had going into this research that you haven't been able to answer yet?
And that's a wonderful question that I talk about with prospective students. There are some fields some jobs where you go into the job in the morning, you do it, you're done, it's over. You start more the next day. Research is not like that.
Yeah.
You never, ever really answer your questions. I have been working on the same questions for actually 24 years here, 40 years I've been working on these questions. I know a lot more than I did, but none of them are solved. And that's okay with me because we've realized that we didn't really understand the question in the first place. And now the questions are more refined and they're more interesting.
Yeah.
And this is what I look for in students. Do they have that interest in wondering what the question is? Not just in answering it, but trying to figure out where the next question is. And that's one of the things it's what keeps me going. I could theoretically retire, but even just today, a new student emailed me, I heard your lab might be accepting new students. I'm like, yes, we are. Let's get started on something new. We'll extend what we know and we'll find something new. That's what I love about it.
I'm glad that you brought up the students. Can you tell me about how the students engage in your research?
Yeah. So I do work in Costa Rica every year for about 3 weeks, and every year, this year, 3 different students, some from here, some from other institutions, are going to be working with me in the field. So that's the usual number that I have in the field. Back here in the lab, the field is, of course, expensive and tricky, and there's lots of permitting and stuff like that. In the lab, there's still lots of tricks to it, but I have a lot of students that work with me, both as undergraduates. Right now, I have about 12, I think. And then I also have 12 graduate students that work with me. And the grad students are longer term, typically 2, 3, 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And the undergraduates might work with me for as little as a semester, but I like them to work with me for a little longer.
Yeah.
And it starts out with them just learning how to do an experiment, keep a fish alive, learn to watch a fish. The fish will tell you everything if you know how to read them. They'll tell you.
Yeah.
They'll tell you that they're courting, and then their colors have changed. They'll tell you that they're breeding. They don't mean to tell you where their kids are because the kids are hidden, but they keep looking at them. And if you watch them, they're like, oh yeah, a fish never sits still for no reason. It's like, why is she always over there in that flower pot? And then you look and you'll find that they have these 1 millimeter in size transparent eggs, but she's pointing at them. She's trying not to.
Yeah.
But she has to keep checking on them.
She has a tell.
And it's a tell. It's exactly like in card games. And then you learn. And so teaching the students how to watch, how to get information, and then one of the most exciting parts is then how to put that together and how to present it in public. We've had several poster events in the last few weeks, and I'm very proud to watch my students stand up there and tell people, ranging from other students to other faculty to last week to the president, explaining why they do what they do and how it excites them. That's the best. That's just the best.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah. To spread the word.
Now, you mentioned Costa Rica. So I would just like to know, like, what do you do when you're there? Outside of the research, like,
right?
What do you like to do in Costa Rica?
So I've been going to Costa Rica since 1989.
Wow.
Every year since '96, except for COVID 1 year. The university would not allow me to go. Turned out it was actually safer there than here. But anyway, I go every year at least once, and I live at a field station, which is like. It's a little bit like summer camp for adults. It's in the middle of the rainforest. They feed us. They provide food. They provide basic accommodations. It's not a luxury hotel, but they have what you need, and that allows us to focus on doing the work. And the work for us consists of snorkeling. I don't do a lot of diving, mostly snorkeling.
Okay.
In rivers. There's a river right there that runs through the field station. And we also drive around the country, and I have been over almost every square inch of Costa Rica. I've been there 35 times, I guess, or something, and due to go back in another month. We are looking for fish. We're filming fish. We're still photos and video, underwater video. One of my dream projects is to make an actually a film for the planetarium, an immersive film of what it's actually like. Because I can show pictures, but people can't really see what it's like to be there.
Yeah.
So we're working on that. We record a lot of data on a lot of fishes, and a certain percentage of my time, I always devote about 10-20% to exploring.
Okay.
Because we started out working in a few rivers, and then someone said, "We got to go over there," and we went over there. And we just do this thing where, is that a road we've never been down? Let's go down that road. We don't know what's there. Is there a river there? We use whatever maps are available. They're not great. We use GPS. We use everything that you can. A lot of the satellite systems don't work in the rainforest because they can't penetrate the clouds. So there's a guessing game, and there's a driving along, and there's asking people, is there a river down that way? Or, and the other very important question, are there crocodiles in that river? that is an important one.
Yeah.
We have learned that some people give you great answers. We have learned that a couple of guys that have been drinking a lot of beer sitting on the side of the river are not a great source of accurate information. One time they told us there were no crocodiles. We went in the river, and the other local people, the local people of Costa Rica are generally fantastic people. And they come running out, get out of the river, crocodile, get out of the river. We have encountered so many wonderful people who, once they find that we're not there to take and eat the fish, that we're there because we love the fish, they love the fact that we love their fish. And I call these the underwater treasures of Costa Rica. And people they'll bring us food. They'll say, you want to use the shower? Anything we can do to help you? The people of Costa Rica love their country. If you've never gone, go to Costa Rica. They love the country. It's a beautiful place, and we love exploring it. It's not a huge place. 35 trips, and I still haven't seen everything. I haven't been to most of the major tourist spots. Go to all the other places.
Out of those 35 trips, how often and like how many would you say students have come along?
Just about everyone.
Really?
Yeah, just about everyone. There's at least one student. I can only take so many at a time.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, we go different places. We explore. We, like I said, we try places we've never been down that road that isn't on the map. Sometimes there's a new trail, and there was one river. We had gone by that river probably for 15 years. And then we're driving along and we saw some people walk up the bank of the side of the highway with their swimming stuff. We're like, you don't wear swimming stuff coming up from the forest unless there's swimming there.
Yeah.
This was a river that was maybe 100 feet from a place we'd gone to countless times. Just didn't know it was there. Turns out it's a great site.
Yeah.
So there's this. I love this exploration side of it.
Is there what would be the most surprising experience you had while in Costa Rica?
Well, the crocodiles are surprising. They appear. I remember one time I was trying to explain to a new student what a crocodile was like and where they likely were to be. And I said, well, they're usually over there, and they kind of look like a little bump on the river. She goes, you mean like that? It's like, yes, exactly. There was one right there, right there. So we've never had any issues with crocodiles.
Thank goodness.
We've been very close to them. But I think it is wonderful to watch the fish do their thing. We work particularly in fast water. So water that's moving very quickly. You can't swim in that water. You sort of float downstream. You hold on to a log or something like that to maintain your position. And to watch these parent fish guarding their little kids and the expression herding cats is about right. They're a bunch of little kids. They do what little kids do. They go their own way, and the parents are herding them together. That is the most wonderful thing to watch. I have been very lucky over all these years to see everything from actual spawning, laying of eggs, to guarding, to nests getting eaten by other things. We've seen all sorts of things.
Well, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about the Fish Lab. Tell me about it. Tell me why you launched it. And I think I'm interested in hearing about the state of this place before you got your hands on it.
Oh, okay. So when I got here, I was working in Costa Rica, but I had been at Berkeley. I did a postdoc at Berkeley for 8 years, and we had under Professor George Barlow, a wonderful human being. He's since passed, and he had a large lab of fishes where we could study fish in the tank. There are things you can watch in the field, and then when you really want to get to the nitty-gritty, you need to be up close where you can put cameras on them and see them in person and watch. That's the same fish every day, and there's no weather to deal with, So I wanted a fish lab, and when I got hired, I said, I need a fish lab, and they said, we'll give you a fish lab. I said, okay, and I got here, and the room that I got, it's turned out to be wonderful. The original room is a reasonable lab. It's in an old building, Humboldt. And the place for the fish was a storage room that had exactly 2 light bulbs in the ceiling and pretty much nothing else. And it had stored all sorts of whatever people had forgotten about was in there. Yeah. And so when I first got here, it was an exploration of removing things, some things that had been there for a very, very long time. And I will remember for the rest of my life, we used to do a lot of dissections in some of our courses, and they would be on things like fetal pigs. Well, maybe you had a class of 22 and you had ordered to 24 fetal pigs. Oh, boy. So there would be a bucket with 2 fetal pigs. That wasn't enough for another class, and so it just kind of got pushed to the back of the room. Lovely. Some of these had been there for a very, very long time. And I remember I had the painters in. They were wonderful people painting the outside lab, and they were getting everything. And I was in this room, and I said, I wonder what this is. And I opened up this bucket. And I guess the smell was not only a smell, but it was a denseness of air that it traveled along near the ground. And there was one of the painters who was painting under the counter. And this blast of dead pig air, made it over to him. And he just went, oh, and he ran out of the building. I can't even remember if he ever came back. It was pretty intense. So we started with a very basic room. And if you go there now, I've since expanded to 2 other old storage rooms. We have built it up to a facility that has 170 fish tanks.
Wow.
And there's thousands of fish. And there's all these students that work there. Some I try to get to Costa Rica if I can, but many of them that's not possible. Life and all those things, expense. And so they can actually see this stuff in the lab. And the wonderful thing about these fish is they do the same things in the lab they do in the field. So it's perfectly valid stuff. We can watch them taking care of, having babies, taking care of their kids, choosing mates. They do all that in the lab. The students do that. And I've had over 200 students go through that lab.
And additionally, it sounds like you enjoy welcoming outsiders in to learn as well.
Absolutely. A very formative experience when I was an undergraduate. I was at University of British Columbia. It's a very large research institution. And there's a lot of closed doors. You know, you wondered what went on behind those doors. And I was not the boldest person, and I didn't knock on those doors. Sometimes one would be cracked open and you'd peek in. And I decided that's not what I wanted. Whenever there's students in the lab or I'm in the lab, the door is open. And anybody, absolutely anybody, student, staff, faculty, provost, president, they've all come in. And people from the public just come in. And my students are instructed, you always give a tour to anyone that wants to come in.
And what's the room number?
You
mentioned
Humboldt,
yeah.
119. It's
Humboldt
very
119.
easy to find. There's just tons of fish stuff. You can tell it's the more fish stuff you see, the more you come in and come and see what. It's important to me that particularly young people see what is possible. They might have never thought I could study fish for a living, or that I could even go to college for a living. I'm first in my family to go to college. Absolutely critical to me to inspire more people.
Wrapping things up, are there lessons for human parenting that we can glean from these fish?
People ask me that. I want to be very careful about that. One lesson is that it's much easier with 2 parents. Cooperation is an amazing and wonderful thing. And so we're very interested in those things. One of my students did a really cool thing where instead of attacking the kids with one predator, she attacked them with 2 models at the same time. And it was wonderful to watch, a big one and a little one. It was wonderful to watch the parents look at this problem, solve it, and the male would go, I'm going after the big one, you take the small one. And they work as a team to do it. I think that's a wonderful lesson. Teamwork is great.
I love that answer. Okay, let's go to the lightning round then.
Okay.
And now that I'm getting started with this kind of feels like a mean question, but do you eat fish?
Yes, I eat fish.
Okay.
I even eat cichlids. Many of you, if you eat any fish, you've probably eaten tilapia. Tilapia is a type of cichlid. Now, this may put you off of it. They actually are what's called mouth brooders. They carry the babies in the mouth. Female tilapia carry. It is fabulous to watch. Fabulous to watch. So you can feel a little bit guilty about that. Yeah. But they are raised for food in many parts of the world, including California. And yes, I eat fish.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel less bad now.
I do not eat the fish out of the lab. We don't pick that one and say we're not going to keep that one anymore.
Now, if you could travel to any time in the past to study the fish of that era, what would it be?
Oh, gee. I'm not. I like being in the present because we know so much more now than we did in the past. It would be wonderful to go to the Amazon 50 years ago and go exploring. But I have been to the Amazon more recently than that, and it's still wonderful to go exploring. Yeah. I would say it's not so much a matter of time, it's a matter of place. There are wonderful fish everywhere on the planet. For my cichlids, I've never gone to Africa. It's still on the bucket list. There's a lot of cool fish in Africa and in South America as well. There's just so many places to go.
Yeah. And is there you mentioned that you were from Canada.
Yes.
Is there a Canadian stereotype that you would like to squash for us or that you just can't stand? Maybe it's not true.
Oh, that's hard because when I first got here, I would say A a lot. Good day, A.
Yeah.
And the stereotype is true because when I go visit my mom and my family back in British Columbia, I start saying A again. Mm-hmm. So we all say A. I do like poutine. And I
don't blame you.
And I've played hockey most of my life. I don't play anymore, but my brothers in Canada still play, and they're almost the same age as me, almost exactly, and they all still play. So that stereotype is true.
Well, let me step in then. We'll go with our bonus question. Your favorite hockey team?
I don't really have one.
Okay,
I've never been a team. I enjoy watching, but yeah, I don't have that. I do love the game. The game is a wonderful game, and actually for a lot of the same reasons why I study things. Hockey is a game of a team. You can't win a hockey game on your own. I mean, you might be very good, but you're not going to win. Yeah. It takes a group of individuals working together, and so I suppose that's a common theme. Of my, I never really realized that, of my career, that this interest in teamwork and problem solving as a pair or as a group.
Okay, well, Dr. Coleman, thank you for coming out here today.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it, and please come visit the fish lab.
Yes.
The fish do not leave. They're there. So, and we're there most of the time. So please come visit.
Yeah, I'll come by and see you with my girls.
All right. Thank you.
Beyond J is a production of University Communications at Sacramento State. Our producer is Jonathan Morales. Photography and videography by Bibiana Ortiz. Additional research by Cynthia Hubert. And editing by me, your host, Philip Allstott. If you liked this episode, please leave us a review and consider following us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have questions or comments, email us at communications@csus.edu and visit us online at csus.edu/news/beyondj.